Good morning. Good to see everybody here. We're gonna watch a video in just a second that'll probably tell some of the story better than I can. The first job I ever got a paycheck for was when I was, I think, 10 or 11 years old. And when you're 10 or 11, getting a check is a pretty big deal. And it was cleaning the concession stands at Lipscomb basketball camps at 6 in the morning with Joe Gaskin. And the guy that gave me the job was also the guy that gave me a chance to play basketball here at Lipscomb, is Coach Don Meyer. And the court, when you go into Allen Arena and you look on the court, you'll see his name on it as well. He was a record-setting coach. When he finished his career, he had won more games than any other coach in NCAA history. He has won numerous awards, too many to count, really. Among the coaches' fraternity, when you ask coaches like Bob Knight or Pat Summitt or Coach K or those kinds of people, who are some of the guys that you, or guys or girls that you look up to, his name is always mentioned. And I always tell people, I guess is the best way I can compliment or talk about Coach Meyer is to say that if my house ever caught on fire, the two things I would grab would be the external hard drive that has all of our family's pictures backed up on it, and the 4 notebooks from my basketball career at Lipscomb University. Each year we kept notebooks and kept the notes of what went on, and it's really not because I need to remember how our inbounds plays worked. It's because there were so many other lessons about life that were in those notebooks, so many notes we took over the years. And so Coach Meyer is a great coach, but more than that, he's a great teacher. And when he was hired at Northern State, they called me for a quote and said, what do you have to say? And I said, tell all those guys that they don't know it, but they just enrolled in the best class they'll ever take in college. And I still believe that. So let's watch this video, and then I'll introduce formally, I guess, our speaker. Let's watch this video.
There are many here tonight whose excellence has been reflected in the bright glare of the world spotlight. This year's recipient of the Jimmy V Award has achieved his greatness quietly and steadily, often with a minimum of fanfare. This season, Coach Don Meyer broke an historic record in the annals of coaching, yet his is a name that not everyone has heard of. But to coaches like Bobby Knight, Pat Summitt, and the legendary John Wooden, he is, quite simply, the man. Tonight, we honor more than Don Meyer's record. We honor an unbelievable triumph of will, powered by faith, tenacity, and the love of coaching.
Don Meyer has been a dedicated coach and mentor to all who've known him in college basketball for 38 seasons. But last season, he became something else. An inspiration. On the verge of winning more games than any men's coach in college history, Don's life would change in an instant, and he would find himself tested in ways unimaginable. September 5th, 2008. An 18-wheeler crushes Don's car in a head-on collision. The truck shatters all his ribs, filling his chest with blood. His spleen is destroyed, his diaphragm torn, his left leg pulverized. Incredibly, worse news would come later that night. During surgery, doctors discovered that Meyer had cancer in his liver and intestines. It was inoperable. His family prayed for his survival and wondered, how would he cope?
He had tubes in his throat, so he couldn't speak. And he couldn't move except to just wiggle his right hand. And so we put a pen in his hand, and he wrote on the piece of paper, "How long before I can coach?"
Neither his injuries nor his cancer diagnosis had shaken his resolve. But then, another setback. 14 days after surgery, his leg was amputated below the knee. Still, he persevered.
There we go.
After 55 days in the hospital,
Wasn't worth resting.
Don Meyer left in a wheelchair and was at work at 4:45 the next morning,
Now we take a shot with Mitch over here.
where he coached all year without missing a single game.
Use your hands more. You'll make some mistakes, but just use them.
I love to see how a team can improve and kids can improve, so that's why I coach. I mean, there's nothing better than that. I mean, it just eats you up inside how lucky you can be coaching kids.
And we need to have a great warm-up doing those things there if we want to do them in the game.
On January 10th, Meyer won his 903rd game, setting a record that just months before seemed so out of reach.
We're never going to be able to thank all of you, but you need to know how much it means to our family and to our team.
You go through what I went through with this, you're gonna get emotional, you're gonna cry a little more, you're gonna hug people, you're gonna wanna say what's important to people before they leave, because you might never get a chance again to say it. It was a blessing in a lot of ways for me. It's made me a different person.
Nah, I'm okay. You want to spread those out a little bit. It's like chickens to corn. They all suffocate. Are you one of the Robertsons? The one they wanted to forget about. Okay, I know you guys got stuff to do and places to be. Communication, really big today. I know a lot of you will be working on your cell phones while I'm talking, because I'll be boring. If you're behind the times and use smoke signals, please don't ignite anything while you're in here. We found in South Dakota that using a wet blanket's better than using a dry one when you use smoke signals also, unless it's just a quick call. Well, those are going real well, so let's go to the meat of the talk. Communication, big deal. It's the whole deal because it's all about relationships. I think it was like 5 years ago, maybe 6. I had 2 legs then, and came in from recruiting, got in about 1:32 in the morning. We were going to practice at 5:30, so I had to decide if I was going to go in or if I'd stay and try and get some sleep. And you've got to drive, 5 hours to get to civilization where we are. So that's why we're on the road so much. And it was cold, so put on my pajamas, crawled in bed, and it was still cold. But I'd watched some James Bond movies about shared bodily warmth. So I kept moving closer to my wife, and finally I was reaching and touching and reaching, and she was breathing deeper and faster and deeper. Finally, just as I pulled my hand back, she turned and looked at me and said, "Don, oh Don, why did you stop?" I said, "Because I got the remote." I enjoy the delayed laughs even more than the spontaneous. I know those people are dumber, but they picked it up gradually, and that's what counts. Now, the thing is, see, a lot of you guys, you think that's funny, but here's the real deal here. You have to know the difference between knowledge and wisdom if you're a husband. Knowledge is knowing what to say. Wisdom is knowing whether or not to say it. Unfortunately, I said it. Because she said to me, "How would you like not to see me around here for a couple nights?" And I said, "That would be outstanding." Well, that was a Monday night. I didn't see her on Tuesday, didn't see her on Wednesday, but by Thursday, the swelling had gone down enough that I could just... Okay, I promise not to use that one anymore. One of the most interesting things that happened to me at Lipscomb was meeting a guy named Cleve McClary. Now, he spoke at Chapel here, he spoke to our team. He's come out, he hunts pheasants in South Dakota, just like Bobby Knight did. I saw Bobby Knight a couple weeks ago at a pheasant place. We ate supper together and stuff. But Cleve McClary, he's a heck of a pheasant hunter because he doesn't have one arm. So he just sort of like this. See, Cleve was an assistant coach at the University of South Carolina in football. And he came out of the stadium after a game and he saw some kids burning the American flag. Now, this was during Vietnam. He had a wife, he had kids, he had everything. And he gave it all up to go fight in Vietnam. Took his shotgun with him and he cut off the shotgun because that's what you fought with. It was best for him, and it was a hellish war, to say the least. But they didn't call it a war, they called it a conflict. You know, it wasn't a real war, just a conflict. Now, marriage is a conflict. This was a war. I mean, this was a real war. So, when he went to war, they got in a battle one time, and they had no terrain to protect them, so they had to dig a foxhole. And he had room in there for 3 people. It's, you know, most of the military units that are really doing the dirty jobs, like the SEALs, they go in teams of 3. The Navy SEALs teams of 4. Well, he had to pick people for his foxhole. So we developed from that what we call the Foxhole Test. At 12 o'clock, you crawl in the foxhole, that's you. At 3 o'clock, you put the number 1, 6 o'clock, the number 3, 9 o'clock, the number 2. Now, in that number 3 spot at the crack of your butt, protecting you, you want the toughest, most trustworthy person. So we would always do this test with our team maybe a month or 2 into the practice season and stuff, whatever. At the number 2 spot, you want the second most tough and trustworthy person, because we've all seen the movie Blindside, and we know now why the left tackle makes more money than the right tackle in the NFL, because he protects the quarterback. The only time he gets noticed in a game is when he lets the quarterback get creamed. And the third spot, the right side, we're all geared to look to our right. We've been trained to do that. I can remember at Lipscomb, it was a long time ago, Steve, and 2 kids came down to try out. They were both about 5'4", but they were members of the church, which meant they were much, much better players than that. And they had on white tennis shoes, white shorts, and a white T-shirt with no printing anywhere. And we called shoes that had no printing buddy shoes, you know, buddies. I'm going too deep for some of you. But that was in a time when there's no printing on the shirt. Now, if you did that today, you'd be a bad man, because you'd be breaking the style. Well, we still need help over here, because we'll look and then we'll get lazy. And so I've got my 3 guys now. A real butt kicker behind me. Really tough guy over here that's trustworthy. And a trustworthy person, but just not as good as the other 2. When I went to Northern, we had an All-American who was a junior. In 15 foxholes, he wasn't in anybody's foxhole at any spot. We had a kid who had played 8 minutes a game the year before. He was in 13 out of 15 foxholes at the number 3 spot. He didn't vote for himself, and the All-American, of course, didn't vote for him. Now, we're not picking our pals here. We're picking people that will do what Cleve McClary's number 3 guy did. See, Cleves had 19 surgeries, toes for fingers, an arm chopped off, and one eye's missing. So they just put a black thing over that little pirate's patch. And he's run a 3-hour, 30-minute marathon. And he speaks all around the country. And he's a great pheasant hunter, and his wife is beautiful, and his daughter married Dan Reeves' son, and he lives in Pawleys Island or something, South Carolina. But he wouldn't have had those 19 surgeries if the black sergeant behind him hadn't fallen on a hand grenade. Now that sergeant, he didn't have to have any surgeries. But Cleve got to have 19 because that guy gave his life. So that's the Foxhole Test. That's the Foxhole Test. Now what's that mean for you? You can't ask any question when you interview on jobs now. If you can't tell if the guy's a guy or a girl, you can't ask, are you a guy or a girl? You just got to flip a coin and take your chances. I would give you one hint on job interviews that you might want to put in your phones right now. You can't text the interview. You get that? Next question. You won't be texting. They want to know if you can talk and write, do arithmetic, all that old time stuff. Because they don't want mistakes. Now, the government doesn't care. We didn't really have 7% less battles in Afghanistan. Somebody put the wrong number in. Sure, after the election, they put the right number in. But they're not getting into politics or religion here. Wouldn't want to do that. But the point is, these guys and these girls, they want people that, well, I'll tell you what they want. They want character. There's a guy named Warren Buffett. He wrote that song, Margaritaville. You don't listen to old music here anymore, you guys either, do you? Okay, good. But you're a little different because you're wearing that hat, so you don't count. So, they asked Warren Buffett, a football coach in Nebraska named Tom Osborne, said, what do you look for in hiring? Warren Buffett said, I look for work ethic, intelligence, and character. And the first two, without the last one, will kill you. You hire somebody who's a hard worker, really smart, and has no character, they'll sabotage everything you're doing in your work. And they'll always take shortcuts. They won't grind it out. The reason we have Cool Springs out here is because the guy that wanted to develop it went to Lipscomb. That's the only reason we have it. He's on to his last chance. The guy looks at his resume, sees he's from Lipscomb. He says, okay, I'm in. How much is it going to take? Well, he says, I'll do the whole thing because you're from Lipscomb. And those people have character when they come out. I hope that's still true because we need more Cool Springs maybe. Or maybe we need a orphanage here or something here or something there. But the thing I'd want to ask if I was interviewing is who your 3 best friends were. That's all I'd want to know. I wouldn't want to know all your grades and stuff. Probably took easy courses anyway, if you're smart. Who are your 3 best friends? Because you can't tell an eagle from a buzzard when they fly together. And if you're an eagle and you're hanging around with buzzards, and you get down where those buzzards are, eating up a rabbit or whatever, you're just going to get shot. You cannot hang around with lowlifes and be successful with your life, whether it's spiritual or physical. You can't. There's no way. And more people are destroyed by hanging around with jerks than any other thing. So if the productivity is down on the job, the first thing they want to check is what you're doing off the job. What are you doing with your 3 best friends? Friends like that, who needs enemies? Now, how do you know somebody's your friend? You don't have to measure your thoughts. You don't have to weigh your words. You don't have to measure your thoughts. You don't have to stroke them, massage them, build up their ego. You can just say what needs to be said. That's a real friend. Well, I want to recommend you get this book. I've given away 5,000 of them. I think it's a good book. It's not going to cost you much. It's called The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence. He was a monk who baked bread and did dishes in the 16th century. You see, oh God, come near to me. How stupid. He's here, he's here, he's here, he's here. I got to get closer. So that's what Brother Lawrence is talking about. I read a great thing the other day. It says, you don't ever retire. You're always serving God. You don't ever retire. You're always serving God. And you don't have to be an elder or preacher to serve God. Just by being good to people. There's a guy named Mark Twain. He's a pretty famous writer. Days gone past, before the advent of cell phones and iPads and stuff. He wrote with an actual pen or plucked a feather out of a goose or something and wrote. I always use at the end of my talks, your example is not the main thing in influencing others, it's the only thing. And now I'm adding at the end of that, kindness is the language the deaf can hear and the blind can see. Mark Twain. So all you got to do to be the right kind of influence is set a good example of kindness. Be kind to people. Now that I'm a cripple, I know a lot about kindness because people are kinder to cripples. Good-looking girls smile at me. That never happened before. But they know little buddy's a real stud here, and they respect little buddy, and he likes girls too. He'll wave to them and try to throw Roger leg off so he can see him up close and personal, but kindness. I've wept in the night at my shortness of sight. To someone's need I was blind, but I never yet had a twinge of regret for being a little too kind. Kindness. That last little thing's from a 91-year-old preacher who quit preaching 2 years ago, and now all he does is run the World Bible Hour and 20 million people watch him. 91 years old. He doesn't quit. He doesn't quit. He's still serving God. So I think those are good things to remember. Now I got two little stories to end with. One is, you ever heard of a guy named Bear Bryant? He wore a funny hat. And he coached a little football somewhere down south. He has his first year at the University of Alabama, and he goes to South Alabama to recruit, and he loses the recruit. So he's hungry, and he goes to this restaurant. It says, restaurant. It's on cinder block. Looks terrible. Walks in, and every eye turns to look at him, because you see, he's the only white guy in an all-black restaurant. A big old guy walks up to the counter and says, "What do you want?" Says, I'm hungry, I want to eat. Says, we ain't going to like what we got. We got black-eyed peas and chitlin and collard greens. And Bear says, well, look, I'm just a small-town boy from Fordyce, Arkansas. So I think I'll have me a big plate. I've eaten miles of those. So after he ate, he wanted to pay the guy, and the guy said, no, you don't have to pay. You don't have to pay me. He said, no, he said, for a meal this fine, I should pay. And then he tipped him, not too much to be flashy, not too little to be cheap. And as he's walking out, the guy says, hey, you're the new coach at Alabama, ain't you? He says, yes, sir, I am. My name's Paul Bryant. He said, would you send me a picture? Would you send me a picture? He says, I sure will. So he wrote on a napkin. He went home. They took a snapshot. That's how they did pictures in those days. They didn't have phones to do it. They're called cameras, and I retrogress, but they took a picture and they mailed it down with some other stuff. Now, 22 years later, Bears lost another player, the best player in Alabama from South Alabama, who's going to Auburn. And Bear knows that this kid's just going to kill Alabama when they play. See, Auburn's in the same league as Alabama, and I think they're even in the same state. And I do know they don't like each other. And they even poison each other's trees. So you got to be careful with those guys. But he's in mourning. And 2 days later, he gets a phone call, and it's the kid. He says, Coach, if I was to say I wanted to play for you, would you still take me? And Bear, being calm and cool like he always was, goes, sure would, son. I'll drive down. I'll fly down a good train, whatever. He said, no, Coach, relax. I'll be there. I'll get there. I said, son, tell me, why'd you change your mind? He said, well, my grandpa told me if I didn't play for you, I'd never learn as much about life and football as I should. And then he said he'd never speak to me the rest of my life. See, you ate in his restaurant 22 years ago, and you left him a picture, and that's his pride and joy. And every customer that comes in, he goes, hey, see it? The great Paul Bear Bryant, and I served him his first meal in Alabama. And on the picture it says, thanks for the finest meal I ever ate. Paul Bear Bryant, Alabama. It says, and then my grandpa will tell 2 or 3 more lies because he's a really good liar. And when they leave, he says again, yeah, take a look. The greatest football coach that ever lived. And he's my friend. I did a thing for the Huron Chamber of Commerce in South Dakota, and they gave an award for the Business of the Year. It was a sale barn. The father couldn't talk because he lost his voice in '76 as an auctioneer. Now he can whisper and talk, but he can't talk. So one of the kids got up to talk, one of the guys. He said, I don't know how we won this award, because we don't have very many customers. But boy, we sure got a lot of friends. That's what every school, every church, every family, friends, be a friend. And then Bear said, I brought my coaches all in and I told them the 3 lessons my mama taught me. My mama taught me it don't cost nothing to be nice. And my mama taught me it don't cost nothing to do the right thing. And my mama taught me never lose your good name by not keeping a promise you made to someone else. That's Bear Bryant. Mama. She must have been a great mama. So remember that about being a friend. Remember that about Bear Bryant. And remember James 3:13. Who is wise and understanding among you? Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their life, by the deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. I have never met a wise person that wasn't humble. And I've met a lot of arrogant people. You know, they're not wise at all. They're not wise at all. See, I've never met a selfish person that was happy, no matter how much they had. And I've never met an unselfish person that was unhappy, no matter how much they had, whether it be a little or a lot. Because happiness begins when selfishness ends. So remember all that in your dealings with other people. Be wise because you're humble. Be kind. Be kind. Be the language the deaf can hear and the blind can see. And then remember this the rest of your life. Before I go into that, we have a website, coachmeyer.com. It's got spiritual, it's got everything. Coach's Corner, Parents' Corner, Players' Corner, additional handouts, 140-page handout on servant leadership from the workshops that we do. Everything in there. It'd be well worth your while. Probably find something you can use in class. You don't even need to give me the credit. Just say it's anonymous. If you know how to spell it, just put down anonymous. But use that website, coachmeyer.com. I think it could really help you. Now, I played for a coach in college. Coaches at Gonzaga now, and he's a really smart guy. And he had 3 rules for life. Number 1, find your unique talent or gift. Are you an encourager, a motivator, an organizer? What is your special talent that you have? Number 2, develop that talent to the fullest because people don't pay for average. Nobody wants an average piece of pie, an average meal, an average car, an average date, an average movie. We want the best. We're not paying for that. And number 3, give your gift away every day. If you're not giving your gift away, it's a lousy day. Terrible day. John Wooden always used to say, it's never a perfect day until you do something for somebody with no thought of anything in return. When I do a good deed, I always leave 4x6 cards, my name and bank account number, so they can just put money in, automatic deposit, make it easy for them. But that's not the way you do it. You do it without any thought of being repaid. And see, that's where we're all screwed up in religion. We think we're actually going to pay God, and he's going to, we're going to walk our way up the ladder. It'd be like getting a Christmas gift, and then the day after, your dad gives you a bill for the gifts. God ain't going to give you any bill for your salvation. And that's the hardest thing to learn. It's harder to learn than whether or not we should have instrumental music or 1 cup communion. I'm all for 1 cup if I get the first sip. But my struggle is belief. Believing, having faith. And deep down, that's what we all struggle with when it comes down to those last few minutes on the clock. You guys have been great, a lot greater than I thought you'd be. Everybody told me you were just terrible to speak to, but I've really enjoyed it. The big thing in public speaking, always speak to a good audience, and you'll be a lot better than you think you are. Thanks a lot. Got a lot of wonderful memories being here at Lipscomb. Thanks.
Coach has made these handouts available down here if you'd like to come get some of these handouts. Some of you may not realize this, but when our basketball teams play, as they will tonight and Saturday, they're playing on Don Meyer Court. And that was something we were able to do last year. And this is the man it was named after. In 54 days, we'll have the 5th annual Don Meyer Evening of Excellence with the Duck Dynasty guys, also in honor of Coach Meyer. And so this is the man Steve and I were talking about before we got started. If there was a Mount Rushmore of Lipscomb, his face would definitely be on that mountain. So thank you for being here. Come get the handouts if you'd like, and make sure you check Chapel Scanner on the way out.